with everybody at the moment. Isn't it crazy how busy we all are?
Yeah.
Especially in this time.
Yeah. Well, it's always around Christmas, but now in these days with
it seems extra
sort of
busy.
lockdown, but not really a lockdown.
No.
I think it's also because a lot of things are happening online, so people feel like, oh, we can schedule this meeting.
Yeah. Back to back.
It's like, what do you need? 30 seconds break, and then there's another one, and then everything kind of just falls over.
Yeah. Anyway, we're here now, and we're online, and so I would like to start this lunch talk. My name is Catja Edens. I'm an architectural historian and a researcher for Future Urban Regions Lectorate. This is the second edition of a series of lunch talks on M4H, this harbor area. We are in the area as we speak, more specifically at the Keilepan. It's a beautiful building here. And it's a beautiful old warehouse turned into a designers and makers hub, you could say. And the KeileCollectief that is housed here is the initiator of this series of talks, and they invited me to be a weekly moderator, which is a great pleasure because I always get to have really interesting people at the table for these talks. Last week we talked about the history of this area. So M4H is an area that lies between Rotterdam and Schiedam, and it's roughly the size of the city center of Rotterdam, so it's quite big. And we talked about the buildings that we can still see here that come from earlier ages, and the structures that are here, and the things that we sort of inherited from history that we can use now, like the characteristics and the knowledge and the development of the whole area. And we sort of saw that it was not a development with a clear beginning and an end, but it's actually a continuous transformation of the area, which is happening right now as well. So we're talking about M4H as a compact city, a dense, very dense city. That's the whole idea, that this part of the city could become like a poster child for the compact city, combining working, mobility, living, the production of food, the production of energy, and water and waste, all in a tightly knit urban tissue. Everything close together. Proximity is very important in this. And the question, of course, is what do we need to get this done? Do we need to make this happen? So that's why we have you at the table. Hopefully, you can shine a light on that. So on my left is Isabelle Vries. She's the general manager of the Rotterdam Makers District, in which the city of Rotterdam and the port of Rotterdam join forces. And on my right is Thijs van Spaandonk. He is many things, but also the curator at one of the curators at the International Architecture Biennale, Rotterdam, and the head of the urban design department of the Academy of Architecture here in Rotterdam. And then on the further left, there is Izabel Slodka. She is the winner of the Europan design contest for this area with her design Maker's Maze. And well, congratulations. Good that you're here. So two Isabels. Hope we don't get confused. I'm starting off with the first one because you are manager of the Rotterdam Makers District platform. Can you explain to us why the city of Rotterdam and the port of Rotterdam joined forces in this platform?
Yeah, it's about two things, I think: area development, but especially programming, attracting new businesses, innovative businesses for the port and the city. As you may know, the port of Rotterdam is mostly fossil based, but has a huge ambition to be a carbon neutral port in 2050. And of course, the city has the same ambitions as well towards the city. So energy transition is key of success for the future of the port. But also digitalization, all new kinds of what we call the technologies of the next economy. And therefore, the port thinks together with the city that you need space, you need facilities to attract those new businesses, startups, grown-ups, which can innovate the port's economy. On the other side of the Meuse, we have RDM. It's a total different area, I must say, but there also you see lots of new kind of types of techniques developed by knowledge institutes and so on. So the attracting of new businesses in an innovative climate is really one of the big ambitions. And we always say, well, the second Maasvlakte is nice, it's very important, but people, knowledge intensive businesses want to be located within the city center, near amenities, near public space, near vibes.
Yeah.
So that's why the port areas in the eastern part of the city are very interesting.
Yes, those are the older areas,
the older port areas.
And about this RDM area, which is on the other side of the Meuse, the school that you're working is over there, has its buildings over there. Can you describe to us what kind of area that is?
It's very interesting to be as an architecture school because it's kind of out of the city. It's old Docklands, Docklands shipyard.
Yeah.
It has been closed, I think, for 20, 30 years after it became the RDM campus. Well, and I think the most interesting about that particular area is the way to, how do you actually get there? There's two ways, either by car or by boat. If you go by boat, then crossing the water from Lloyd's Pier. It's a 10-15 minute boat ride, and really kind of that boat ride is also mentally kind of you're going towards the academy or to the RDM campus. So it's the journey is already part of the experience. And if you travel by car, then you pass by a lot of containers and container terminals. So really through the harbor, and then you end up in this small village of Heiblaat,
Right.
Where I think in the past the people who worked in the Docklands used to live.
So actually, this place that we are talking about, which is on the other side of the Meuse, is quite distant. Feels distant.
Distance, yeah.
That's the beauty of it, in a sense. But that's also the attraction of this site, right? That it's not distant.
Yes, if you look at climate for doing businesses, but also knowledge-based institutes and housing, of course, but that's the other subject. But then this area is really, well, it's the last port area at the northern bank, actually, and Schiedam is also some of these areas. But it's very close to the subway, of course. So it gives a whole other environment for doing things. And you see that now already that a lot of interest is here in this area to settle houses, but also to settle corporates and businesses.
Yes,
and it's also more interesting compared to not port areas, but for instance, Brainport, or those office locations near the highways. I think it's returning now, and that also those kind of corporates want to be in the compact city.
Yeah, they want to be closer together, closer to all the
not at the
amenities,
highway
shops,
center.
So this means a lot of things, but let's first look at this area, because there is like the old world and the new world sort of happening at the same time. And it seems that the process that you are choosing, from within this platform that you're managing, is different from other processes worldwide.
Yeah, if you look all around the world, support transformations into cities, then you and also have it at the Kop van Zuid, Vierhavensblok here in Rotterdam. It's the port is out, then it's 10 years or so. It's a brownfield, and then the city is coming up. So the port out city in model.
Port out city in model. That's the old way.
That's the old way. We think this area needs some other development strategy. Yes, port authorities safeguarding also the interests of the still going on port businesses. as long as they have their contracts or leasing contracts. No one wants to buy out them because, I mean, it's very costly and we don't have space. So the compact city is also here about moving the city into this area where there are still vital businesses.
Is this a quality? Because they
I
used
think
to say,
it's a challenge.
get the dirty stuff out,
Yes.
the difficult, dirty, loud stuff out, and then get
Yeah.
the city in, right?
Yeah.
And now you're saying, okay, we'll just keep the dirty, loud stuff, and we're sort of shoving the city in.
Yeah, is that equality? Yeah, I think it's a strategy because it has a financial base, but it's also, I think, good housekeeping, good being a landlord for your core businesses.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think it's a good strategy to, if you could have the money and you have the alternatives for those kind of businesses, then we're talking about 100 hectares of land, so that's a lot.
Yeah.
The city can't develop that directly into 5 years, within 5 years into a urban district. So there's a time you need for development. I think it's going to cost us 20 to 25 years, and in the meantime, there are a lot of brownfields laying there, and I don't think that's responsible. If you look at compact cities, then you have to be smart and say, okay, if there are some companies who are still vital and still have employees, why don't we embrace them or try to combine? And it's not easy.
Yeah.
We know, but we try to combine those.
Yeah, because you just said, okay, so we're talking about businesses, we're talking about harbor activities, and then you were saying, and then there's housing, and that's a whole different story. But it is, in fact, not, because...
No, it's a combination. The
Yeah.
programming of, it's not a different story in the sense of this area. This is a combination, a mixed-use area.
Yeah.
That it should be for housing, for working, living, and businesses. And of course, all the things you need, cultural things, historic amenities.
Yeah.
But the combination, the mixing is the exciting thing. It's a quality, we think.
Yeah.
And it's also a key of success for facilities you want to have. For instance, energy transition. Businesses can produce energy for housing, for instance, or mobility, accessibility. On the other hand, it's not easy, especially the heavy industry. It's not easy to combine. So,
No, because there's, of course, laws, rules, regulations.
Yeah.
Your job can't be easy.
No. Fortunately, it's
Are there any
complicated,
loopholes to go through?
dull. Yeah.
Sorry?
Otherwise, it would be dull if it were
That's
easy.
true.
Yeah.
That's true. So this proximity, it affects, in fact, all layers of life, you could say.
Yeah.
We're going to speak to Isabelle later on about her plan, which is all about that, and to Thijs as well. But, you know, just to get an image, and maybe you want to join in, what does that compact city look like? It will be quite different from what we're used to from the, you know, our modern cities in which everything's neatly organized. We're looking at something very different, right?
Yeah, but I think if you only go, I mean, we're here in the KeileCollectief, and on the ground floor there's an exhibition now on the, well, you discussed it last week, on the future, on the history of if you look at those images and you look carefully, then you see a lot of people working in this area, and those people don't travel by car, they travel by foot or by bike from the surrounding neighborhoods towards this area. So they were employed there, and the houses were also built for the people who work in the harbor. So I think if you talk about compact city, then that's, for me, is the kind of the core issue. It's the proximity of labor close to where people live, so they don't have to travel a lot, and they can travel by foot or by bike. I think that's the core of the compact city. So we don't have to. Well, we can also look into history to think, how did we do it then? And it was also, of course, the entrepreneurs in the harbor that facilitated housing for their employees. Not always charity, but I mean for different reasons. But also have control about on it. But the combination and the synergy between housing and labor in a certain area was quite clear and well organized. And it's now.
So in fact, you're saying it's not such a new thing. We know this 30, 50
Yeah, like
years ago.
the wijk Oud-Mathenesse was founded because of course.
Yeah.
And now we're looking to new bonds, not new physical but also economical, social binding of those two areas. But and of course, we have environmental regulations, and if you look at the pictures of the old days, it was not so very healthy.
And not safe.
So that's a different time,
Yeah.
but combination, and that's why we framed it as Makers District, an innovative urban district, but with entrepreneurship, with workshops. That's really what we aim for. That's a new way of thinking compared to. If you look at Kop van Zuid, I live there.
Yeah.
I work there, by the way, as well. But
Okay.
and
So
Vierhavensblok.
it's living and working together then.
Yeah. But
Or is it just because of COVID you're
Yes,
working at
because,
home?
there is no bike shop, there's no workshop for carpenters. There's no. It's quite clean, and yeah.
And this is what you're envisaging with your design as well, right? We're going to talk about it later, but just the image of what the environment here could look like in a couple of years.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's there are also some spatial qualities that enable this. I think it's a lot about program and mix of people, but I think this way of designing, and I think what will happen also with M4H is more of the framework and kind of a system rather than the blueprint and the ready urban design, because it's something that I think with the mix of users, then you have also more dynamics that are happening on the site, and you need to kind of facilitate this with maybe some.
Actually, what I was looking for is, and I'm sure that many people that are watching this conversation are thinking, okay, but what will it be like? I walk into this area. I mean, we can talk about systems all we want, but what is it like? Do I see a workshop and then a house?
Your plan, you can. Well, it's good.
That's why I asked you.
It's a good link.
Yeah, I think it's also a lot about exchange and learning. So this kind of you have you have two functions or multiple functions that kind of are close together. But I think because of that, then you have some kind of overlap between different users, and then it's really, I think, beneficial for multiple functions.
So we walk into this area, and then we hear some people maybe making stuff, making noise, getting materials in.
Yeah, and then you have a shared lobby with housing and making that you can borrow tools, or you can do some kind of small fixes, or you can have a workshop for kids and or open day, and it all kind of is more available. You don't need to go to other side of the city to experience this. You see how things are done. You can fix your chair. It also helps with the circular future city, right? Like I think it also, because this kind of distance and the fact that you need to drive somewhere by car, or you cannot really carry your couch on your bike. It really prevents this kind of exchange, and with mixing and with proximity of these functions, then you can really kind of add to the circular economy and.
I get it. Yes, so it's like a community in which everybody can do something, and you sort of help each other, right?
Yeah.
Or
and
assist each other.
I want to add that that's very vital in if you look at literature, but also we experience it nowadays, especially on the occasion of this building, the Keile Pans or Keile Werf. But we see it also at RDM. If you meet another guy who is working on, for instance, some technology, and you see that, you think, hey, I need that. So meet and greet. We're all talking about digitalization and MS Teams and Skype, etc. But meet and greet is very vital to come up with new ideas together. And that's why we also stimulate the communities to work together.
I get that, and it sounds actually like a really nice
done in her.
There is a spatial framework that has been approved this summer. How big of a milestone is that?
Yeah.
Oh.
2009, but it's okay.
Yeah, it's like 2020 was a weird year.
Yeah.
We couldn't forget all about it.
We erased it.
Summer 2019, it was approved.
Yeah.
How important is that as a milestone for this area?
Yeah, it's important because we found, I think, common ground with developers, with businesses, with initiators like KeileCollectief and the municipality and the Port Authority to have this common ground of how we want to develop and how we think this area should look like. But of course, it's on high level. We need further designing, further studies, etc., etc. But it's really, I think, a very good foundation. I hope it will be so, to make new plans for the different areas. And we have a lot of different areas between the street area.
Yeah, it's really big. Like I said before, roughly the size of the city center of Rotterdam. So that's quite a bit of space.
Yeah,
so
and
the framework
we try to be in somehow precise in some things we want to achieve. Like, for instance, the logistics, the whole movement of the trucks want to change, and the two hotspots in the center. That's quite precise. And on the other hand, we say, well, it's quite high level and it is adaptive, and there are a lot of things can happen between the lines. So it's not a blueprint indeed. Yeah.
No, so there's a groundwork. There's some things that are very vital for the development of this area as a combined living and working area, and other things that have to be left open.
Yeah.
So you have some flexibility.
Yes, and we hope it's an invitation also, the principles of circularity. We hope it's an invitation also, not a regulation, but an invitation for parties to step in and to come up with ideas when we are ready for some buildings or plots or spaces.
Yeah, exactly, because an area like this, which has a certain openness, has, offers certain possibilities because there is space, can offer space for new initiatives and new players, and they can help sort of propel it forward, and you can do new things. One of these players is the International Architecture Biennale. It started, I think, last summer here, or was it also?
I think moved in May.
Yeah, so spring. And can you tell us what the connection is between this area of M4H and the Rotterdam Architecture Biennale?
It's kind of guessing, because I was not involved when the decision was made to actually move to this area.
Yeah.
But what I know of it, that before the Architecture Biennale moved into this building, also they already did half of the Architecture Biennale is about research by design. So it's about in partnership with, for instance, the City of Rotterdam, investigating potential futures of the city.
And actually doing it, testing it on the ground?
Well, yeah, doing research by design, basically. But then one of the test sites was this area, so M4H, but we call it M4H Plus, because we didn't want to stop at the boundaries of what was M4H, like physically, but also see how it connects to the surrounding neighborhoods, like Oud-Mathenesse, like Bospot Tussendijk, and how can these kind of different areas also collaborate. Yeah. So after the last Biennale, so we are invited to also become inhabitants of this building, and that fits really within the principle of the Biennale was about the missing link, 2018, the missing link. So that also means practice what you preach. And so if you think about a test site, and you have the opportunity to move to that area, and that also fits within the principles of what you preach, basically.
Yeah. So what you're saying is this Biennale doesn't just show what you could do or in which direction you would have to go as for urban design or architecture, but you're actually doing the research yourself on the ground it has happened here, and now you're sort of part as the Biennale of this development, right?
And the Biennale has a history in that. Also, the previous test site in Rotterdam was the Schietblok.
Yeah.
The Luchtsingel, that was also initiated by becoming a test site with the city of Rotterdam for the Biennale.
Yeah.
And that kind of sparked that initiative.
Right.
Together with us and all the partners there, but it was also a test site.
Yeah. So, and then it was actually the owners of this building, Compacte, that invited the Biennale. How important is that? You know, this sort of ownership in an area like this, and being able to do this.
Well, I think it's super important, and it's a topic we discuss also now in the current exhibition, which is about whose energy is it anyway? It's about the energy transition, but focuses on the question of ownership. So who decides? Yeah, who decides on the energy transition? Who owns the process of the transition? And we try to present the idea of, hey, sustainable energies should be part of the commons. We think it's part of the commons, which means it's, well, we don't own the wind, we don't own the sun, so also means we can all use it.
Just to stop you there, because that's an interesting notion, I think, the commons. It's about, you know, what we own together as a people, I guess. Can you, in short, explain, you know, the history of the term, or how do you use the word commons?
I think the commons is that what we own together, or that we can use together. We don't own it, but we can use it together. But we have duties to maintain it, and we have duties to maintain that this collective property, which is not the right word, but it's the commons. That's but also the future generations can still use it to support in you know, your basic life. So that
One of the things
you
need.
well, subsistence. So it can support you the subsistence of the community that is in that lives around that common, basically.
Yeah.
In a way, we think energy transition is difficult to proceed in that because energy is a business model for a lot of well, in Rotterdam we have Eneco, which is now a Japanese company.
Right.
So it's a business model for a company, while we say maybe it helps us to see it as especially the renewable energies. Now they're not a business model; they're part of our commons. It's collective ownership. So it should support also in our way of living instead of that we're only consumers. No, we're not. Yeah, we're part owner of this.
Yeah, so
we should be part owner.
So if we're looking at the future of this area, M4H as a compact city, you know, bringing together all these activities, bringing together all these different layers, because we're not just working, not just talking about working and living, we're also talking about mobility, we're talking about energy, water, waste, and you know, all that stuff, nature, ecosystems, sort of coming together in this place. How could, if we just focus on the subject of energy, because your exhibition is about that, you studied it, how would that work out in a compact city like that?
Before I answer that question, I now think that I didn't answer your last questions because it was about this building. And what I think here is very interesting is that Group A, they bought this building, they became owner, and then they opened it up as part of the commons. So they have an exhibition space which they offer to the city of Rotterdam. Well, this place where we are now, they organize public events.
It's a collective.
Yeah, sorry, it's a collective.
Yeah,
that's true.
That's community already. Yeah.
Collective of companies, they bought this property, became owner, and then opened it up also for the public good. And I think that's a very interesting thing.
That's a commons-like way of thinking.
Exactly. Yeah. And you could. Well, if it's about energy transition, then I think M4H is an interesting area because partly there are a lot of current users, but for a large part, it's also still, it's partly brownfield. Well, not as possible, but you also have the opportunity to test how for instance, in existing neighborhoods, where you have all these existing contracts and legal stuff happening, and where you can kind of, in relative simplicity, test a lot of things that you want to apply in existing city. So I think in a way, here you can kind of start over and rethink about how these contracts then should be kind of put in place, because you don't have to work from existing contracts.
Yes.
Right. So if we look at the situation here, you're talking about consumers that are also producers.
Yeah.
So it's about exchanging.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Can
what
you
we
explain
said.
how that would work?
Well, I want to add, because the last Biennale, we worked already with IABR, and we said, what is circular or sustainable future of this area, and how do we do that? Everybody talks about circularity, and how do we implement that in such a big area? Well, it depends on a lot of scales and levels you work with, but we say, well, collectivity is the basis for circularity. The common grounds to be owner with a lot of people of this building or the energy production, that stimulates also that you work in circular. You can share facilities. You can what's waste for me is valuable for you, etc., etc. So
Right.
these principles was tested by the IABR, but also implemented in this public formal plan, spatial plan.
You would perhaps think circular, that's about waste and reusing it, but circular also goes around in other ways, like social ways in which we exchange and help each other and sort of use each other's knowledge and experience and so on.
Yes.
And skills.
Yeah.
It's also about value, actually. So that values also stay within.
Yeah.
That you can reinvest values within a certain area.
So a feeling of ownership is important.
Yeah.
So and let's just because I would like to make this more tangible or more visible. So if we think about this energy subject, how would that work out? If we look at this area, what would we see here?
I think nobody knows, but no, if you look at the compact city or existing city and energy transition, I mean, we all know the windmills and solar panels, and there's all these new technologies that that are being discussed, hydrogen and geothermal energy. So we kind of know where the energy should come from. But what makes it, I think, complex but also interesting in the existing city, but that's where the puzzle is that so you have all these bigger companies that still have a network and then produce energy, but you also have individual citizens or schools or buildings that start producing energy by putting solar panels on the facades and on the roofs, or that generate their own heat from the water or from the subsoil. And the core question is, how do you exchange this energy? Because you'd never use all your energy, or you need more, or in terms of time during the day, you have different peaks in your energy system. So the exchange of energy between people who actually have an excess of energy and a shortage, I think that's the core issue also in the city. And if you look at energy transition, so how do you store it? Is it batteries? Is it the car has a driving battery? Is it heat storage, which you can store? And a battery works for a day, but heat storage can work for like a season. So you have all these different types of storage of energy in the city.
And it could be not one solution, but a whole series.
It's probably a hybrid of
system.
Yeah. But also the compact city, if you look at mixing different functions, is interesting. Because I mean, for housing we need heat to heat our houses, but for office buildings or for or for storage, cold storage for food and stuff, you need cold. That's not a word, but you need coolness. So you have an excess of heat, and can you set up, or a supermarket also needs cool its building. So can you exchange different types of energy between different functions? So the more you mix, the better, or the more resilient you can make of a network or of an infrastructure to exchange this energy.
And it sounds like a sort of a balancing act that never ends, right? That is dynamic, because sometimes you add something, sometimes you change something, and that offers new opportunities.
Yeah, it should be like an open system where you can constantly, well, you talk about resilient also in time, that you can tap in different new sources of energy or new users also in time. Now the current heat networks, they are reliant on for very often like a single source of heat, whether it's a power plant or a waste incinerator. But it's not very flexible. So we should move towards heat networks or energy networks that are fed by multiple sources.
And this is then part of this whole layered vital system, this compact city. And if we look, for example, one of the qualities of this area is water, right? And I'm thinking also about ecosystems. I mean, how would this, do you have any idea of how this could, one thing could profit off the other, or how it would work together? Maybe Isabelle, yeah.
I think the proximity of water makes it very special, like the whole area, but also for the future inhabitants and for the quality of life. But I think it's also from the side of potential logistics, or how we can actually use water in the multiple ways. It's, I think, really multi-use resource that I think has a lot of potential to actually connect the space, also connect with RDM and so on. So that's, I think, it's just opportunity for this whole area to kind of create something that that really links to, well, with the ecosystems, of course, as well, and then with the well, for the whole city. I think there's opportunity in actually exploring this a bit more.
And also being a test site in that space.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and you made this beautiful design, Maker's Maze. Participating in Europan, you can choose from different locations, right? But you chose this one.
Yeah.
And why was that? What appealed to you?
Well, first of all, worth to mention the competition was also made with collaboration with Erika Kladova, and then later on I was working with Maciej and Andrea, so there is so I'm going to say we, for sure. I think it's really special how on one hand you have this kind of notion of a lot of things are already happening on the site, there's community, there's a lot of value present, and then you want to densify it, or you want to develop it. And of course it's a process that will stretch over time, but I think there's this fear that comes really fast of how not to lose it. And I find it quite interesting. Also looking at the examples from Poland, I know this kind of qualities are lost in a second. There's no, I think also spatial qualities of the sites are not really taken seriously. Of course, there will be one or two monumental buildings that would stay, but I think it is pretty special and unique for Rotterdam that it really has chance to become part of the city. There is already plan to, of course, a further plan to make it into innovation district, but and the experimental kind of approach of the whole Rotterdam, I think it really makes it possible to make something different.
Yeah,
because it is not this kind of.
So you feel some sort of responsibility for all the value here, the value in the sense of building structures, but also the people and the initiatives, right?
Yes.
So you agree totally with the idea of not going for harbor out, city in, but sort of easing it into one another to a new structure. Slow transition. Maybe it's good, for everybody that's tuning in to this conversation, just to sort of in a couple of steps explain what your plan is like, and just be as so we can envision what it looks like.
Yeah, well, we approach this from a very architectural perspective, I think, and with the assumption that I also so in different sites, in different places, in Poland or in Denmark or in Berlin, that there's a lot of users and a lot of exchange and this kind of community takes over the site. And this has also something to do with the special qualities of the site. And I think for Vierhavensblok, for me was striking how there's really spatial diversity in the urban grain, like very just different buildings juxtaposed together, and then you have this small maze of alleys and courtyards that are really actively used for the makers, and then you kind of get out of this, and then you see Wurzeltown, that is extremely impressive garden in the middle, connected with the water, and of course all these buildings with their specific ecology and something that you don't really see in city center or Berlin. I think makes it very attractive for a lot of different kinds of people that they want to be part of this, and so I think in a design we really try to build on this existing spatial qualities, and with the assumption that by extending or extrapolating these qualities, then this notion and community can really stay, and also treated this as a framework, or maybe just a spatial idea, way of thinking, rather than a build design just to a blueprint or something that is there to be as a master plan. To kind of preserve this freedom and certain flexibility of
so it's more maybe a strategy than it is a plan.
Yes.
So then it connects sort of to your way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
So what we need to imagine is if anybody goes into this area, they will see these really big buildings, the smaller buildings, the small sheds that don't seem to have much architecture in them, but also beautiful buildings from the past, gardens and so on. And what you're doing in your design is sort of building on this, all this, what is here, and making it even more visible, maybe, or sort of strengthening those characteristics.
Yeah, and we thought in a way that it's important to have space to put this kind of shed on in a courtyard, or to put this kind of temporary structure, or to have this kind of storage for a while. So it's not that everything has to be designed. It's really that people can take also ownership, I think was mentioned before, of the space.
Yeah.
And because of that, I think there's space to create added value, because then suddenly people feel like part of community, because this place really belongs to them. And then there is I think opportunity to create I don't know, shared gardens, or this kind of lobby that serves multiple functions, and I think we see it in a lot of places that it is not abandoned. It's actually really taken care of by the community, and this community is already there. So I think this chance is quite big that this can really work in that way. Yeah.
So will life be better if you live here compared to any other place?
Well, I think there is really chance, and it's already perhaps happening, that there is different, well, not different kind of society, but it's just a little bit different kind of living together, and something that we all maybe craved for so much during the COVID times, that you can live together, and you're not anonymous, and your neighbors, and then the alley in front of your house can become like this kind of living room where everyone goes and maybe, I don't know, have a party together, or so on.
That, to add,
sure.
Entrepreneurs here are very committed to their, and I think that's what you need, whether it's our inhabitants or entrepreneurs or people who work and live here, the combination, that then you are more committed to, to clean up the outside, or to do something for your neighbor, and because they build, I think they build on the future together, and that's well, it seems very, but I think it works.
I like it. I like the image that you're sketching, really. And one last question, maybe for not the last one, but in this part. Maybe for the two of you, because you're both designers, what is the role? You're a designer too.
No, I'm not.
Okay. What is the role of the designer in processes like this? Because you're more working on a strategy, you're talking about systems, but you also have this toolkit of, you know, envisioning a future. So what is your role?
You just said it. Right. No, I think it's. Well, I think research by design more in general. I think it's really trying to make an image, or try to imagine what it could look like, but try to also support it with data, with knowledge of these systems. So to really try to make to show, but also something that is feeling like, hey, this looks really nice, and
like she was
basically like, hey, if this could happen here, then it would be super nice. But at the same time, also try to design it in such a way that you can, hey, but we also research whether it's realistic and it looks like it's actually possible. So also try to think about systems that kind of support the design, basically.
Right. So not be naive. That's
Not being
basically
naive, no.
what you're saying. And do you agree on this?
Well, a bit of naivety is okay. But,
yeah, a little bit of a vision and inspiring.
Yeah,
I think there's some kind of strength to putting something on paper.
Yeah.
That can inspire further discussion and like spatial thinking about the future.
Right.
Translating data into system and translating data into spatial solutions. So it's a little bit what I was saying before. We can assume that in this kind of transformation area, there's a lot of things that are just happening with the makers and so on.
Yeah.
But then we can also ask further question: are there some spatial qualities that really enable this? I'm sure that a lot of people ask these questions, but maybe the designer can really help with linking these two.
Right.
Yeah, because it's different from 10 years ago, where people here said, "Oh well, leave it to us. It's a free state," and that's different. I think what you did very well is, and it was also, one of the ambitions in the framework, but you translated it to the Vierhavensblok that you have more formal alignment around the block, which is more, the public way of welstand. But between that, in the inner city, in the court, there can, like around the Voedseltuin, there can happen a lot of things, and that's more the informal way of designing. So that's what I really like. So we have this alignment and public responsibility for the streets, the Keile, etc. Then within the Voedseltuin, you can do more organic work.
And speaking about that, by the way, I really like the AVL Free State project. Which you're referring to that. Different situation.
As an experiment, it's good.
Yeah, it was really good. Anyway, Isabelle, what is the first thing that we can see in this area from now on? What makes it because the feeling, okay, there's something happening here.
Yeah, I think now the time has come. There are lots of initiatives going on around, especially around this type area, the Vierhavensblok. But now it's the time that also the public parties have committed themselves towards investments. So what we see now at the moment, as we speak, it's a bit messy here. The Keileweg is under reconstruction to invest in public space. Yeah, the famous Keileweg. So public space is really important to have more accessibility for pedestrians and bikers and so on. So that's one good thing. Also, we're working on the tidal park, the Keile. So public space, one, and two, I hope that the two hotspots, like around the Ferrodome, the gas holder, which is immense and huge, quite complex. There we can have the next step, because over there it's a bit of brownfield. And there we want to have also more.
So that lies ahead, and what we can see now or in the very near future is the Keileweg. That will look quite and feel quite different, right? Yeah. That's the whole idea.
Yes.
And Isabelle, you won, and Europan is the kind of competition. If you win, the idea is that it will be realized. What is
Well, I
the
think that
state?
maybe it's perhaps more true for the single building. And I mean, I of course really hope to be very involved in the project, but as I think was mentioned multiple times, it's a process that will stretch over many years, and it's also something that, well, it is difficult to translate, of course, the winning proposal into build a project, but I think there are some principles that really can inspire a way of thinking about this development, and something that has to ultimately also happen with the users of the space and a lot of parties that are
So
involved.
collaboration between you
Right.
and, for example, this platform could very well.
I think it has to be very collaborative in the, but yeah, it's. I think it's great that. That was inspiring. I think for many people to see this proposal, and I'm really happy that it could happen. I guess.
Sure, sure. Let's see, because I do hope you can do something more than just offer this beautiful designer strategy. And Thijs, the Biennale is right now showing the exhibition on energy, right? What can we see and until which date?
Season just started.
Right.
The current exhibition, Whose Energy Is It Anyway, is on show until the Christmas holidays, so until the 20th of December. Then there will be an exhibition in January by the Rotterdam's Weerwoord. There's no translation for it, but it's called Meteotopolis. So it's about climate adaptation, basically. Then in February, there's an exhibition by the Rotterdam Academy of Architecture that we're going to do together with students. We're going to build an exhibition also here. And then in March, this exhibition, which is currently on, and Whose Energy Is It Anyway, will be in a kind of like a 2.0 version, again, in the Keile now. So a bit updated towards implementation, and what's the current research is on bosbolle tussendijken. So we're also going to take the next step, as we did here, to create, to practice what we preach.
Yeah, exactly.
To start action also.
So you keep on working on that,
Yes, exactly.
and we will see the next stage.
Yeah, and there will be, so that will be part of the next exhibition. We follow up into the workshop, the IABR workshop bosbolle tussendijken. So that will be in spring next year. And I think from May onwards, there will be an exhibition in this building by the Biennale called Down to Earth, which refers also to the book you have here.
Yes.
On the table by Bruno Latour.
We haven't talked about it. So where can we land? That's what he asked.
That's the question that we also are raising with this Biennale. Can we somehow find ways that help us to overcome the crisis that we're in now, and not Corona, but the climate crisis,
Right.
in which we really have to do things completely different than we do them now, and can help our profession, but the cultural in general, can it help us to reimagine what this could be? It can help us to actually distance ourselves from what the extractive economy, as Bruno Latour is kind of writing about. Yeah.
Yeah, so you do this step by step.
Yeah.
You do this by working in an area like this, and it's really fascinating. There's so much more to talk about, but I think we have done a good job today. The next lunch talk will be about the realization of the compact city, and I will be talking with Dirk van Pijpen and Christian Kooijman, amongst others. I would like to thank you for today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, I'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.